Okay, before the video camera cut off, Megan had a question that she posed to everybody, and we'll start again with her.
Okay, so whenever we were talking about the Japanese internment camps, like a couple weeks back, we kind of rolled out that American soldiers weren't like the Nazis because, anyways. So I was wondering, after we read this chapter, after Milo and Lee's killing, I was wondering if you guys thought your views changed on that, like, if the rest of Nazis now. Say there's definitely similarities. We even shot people when they went out and killed cities, but we didn't take it to the extent that the Nazis did by trying to exterminate the whole religion.
But we didn't just go out and shoot random people though. I think we had more of a, I wouldn't say misquoted, but more of a reason to, they might have been a potential threat, and where the Nazis, they were just going out and exterminating Jews. We weren't exterminating the Vietnamese.
But like it was cutting how they were killing like infants. Like how is that baby at fault for anything? It said that in the book that they were going out and shooting infants. How is a baby, like, how can it be held accountable for anything?
What's worse, killing it with its mother, or just killing the mother and leaving the child?
It's war. Everything dies in war. There was something going on in that village. Let's say there was some firing with the communism and stuff, and they were going to kill off some Americans and stuff. They weren't going to risk it. No, they're not going to risk that. Who's to say, like, for instance, like the Normandy massacre, like in World War II, the Germans, they made it. That's probably another subject of POWs and stuff. However, it does go on the same subject of killings and stuff.
So we were talking about also, in addition to that, before the camera went off for the second time, about how you kind of disagreed with his assessment in this chapter. You thought that he was a little biased.
Yeah, he is. I think he's totally biased. He tells the story of you just go in and slaughter all these Vietnamese people and just walk away from it and yada yada. I think there's more to this story than what he tells. There's got to be some sort of reason that we go in there in the first place, and that's correct.
Yeah, I think he's a hypocrite because he says America only tells us the good side of it, but I think he only tells the bad side. He doesn't.
So what do you think his end goal is? What's he trying to do?
I'd say like up until now, like in our normal U.S. history classes, we get like everything good about America, and then we kind of counter that with everything bad, and then we get to take both of those sides and find our own opinion about the matter.
In this class.
Yeah, in this class, that's what we're doing. Is like you get the good and the bad, and you get to find the truth, and then figure out that other point of view.
He's giving the other side.
Or the final outcome of things were good. He's showing the steps, the necessary steps, maybe the necessary evils of what we took to gain.
Do you think that he's trying to make a political point or something here? Is that why he's being biased? Or what's the reason behind being biased? I know that the book is all about telling it from a different perspective, but is there something underlying even that in your opinion?
Evil and all evil is good.
I
I think he's saying that everyone has sugar-coated U.S. history to this point, and telling Americans that we were always right, we were always the best and everything, but you start reading this book and you realize we had struggles of like any other country has.
Right. I also think it shows like what we've not been lied to, but what's been hidden from us in school and on our chemistry. We're like, what else have we've not been taught fully?
It also makes you look at what other countries hide from their past. And like obviously we didn't know a whole lot about Japanese internment until we got to high school. I mean, in other countries, who's to say that they don't teach them some of the smaller stuff that we know, and we look at like, oh, that country's bad because they did that. and then what they say about America that's hidden from us, that we have no idea about.
So looking at PowerPoint, there's some country that like completely like, cut out like the Holocaust as their education, like,
Yeah.
and that's something like last year we taught an entire class of the Holocaust that they don't even, those students there won't even know it happened.
Right.
Well, it's kind of what I thought of, like, often saying that they had a reason to go in there, and it's kind of like, but that doesn't say that. But that made me wonder, like, do you think the Germans now have
Oh, yeah. They're not loyal to their country if they would say otherwise, to be honest. I mean, that's how they were saying. I'm not justifying that they should, but I'm saying that they would be disloyal to the country if they said it.
Well, they're all in German. I think they go to the Holocaust, they don't speak anything like it. But yeah.
I'm not just saying Nazis, no, I'm saying anything in general.
Oh,
that
yeah,
has
I've
to-
done, that are gonna do like.
I mean, World War One, how we blamed, or how Germany was blamed for it, and really Nazism wasn't in, all in check yet. There wasn't as much discrimination as World War One was, but we still blamed Germany for the whole thing. And they saw that as wrong, and anyone in that country would see that as wrong as it was.
Or in World War II, destroyed Japanese civilization. So many civilians were killed, and they had nothing to do with the war. Some of them made trying to support it, but they believed that was the only way to stop the war, and the retaliation for the bombing of Pearl Harbor, which we still avoid.
But that also wasn't mass murders, though. That was,
And I know.
that was putting them aside to make sure that none of them were rebelling against America. They were Nazis, put them in camps to die. We put them in camps to protect ourselves, because we had no idea because there were spies in America of Japanese.
And I think that you would say that that's just the price of war, right? Would you say that, would you argue that the internment camps were just, that's just the cost of war?
It's a cost, it wasn't right, it was a cost of war. Who's to say during World War II, if an American was living over in Germany, who's to say you wouldn't be discriminated?
What about after 9/11? And, you know, Muslims were discriminated against. Would you say that if we had internment camps for Muslims, would you say that's a cost of war?
I think the thing about it is to protect ourselves rather than this discrimination. The fear that we have that something like that might happen again in our country.
I mean, I'm not saying our actions would be more justifiable for Islamics just bombing our country and then putting the ones together so you know what's going on, instead of putting or killing 6 million Jews just because you think they're bad for your country.
Yeah.
They had no reason whatsoever to do it. They just like, we think you're lazy, we're gonna kill you. You don't look the same. Yeah.
Well, and it's what we talked about many times in here, that this book, you know, everybody that talks about history, and especially Zim, who's a professor, he comes at it from his own point of view. Okay? Like you guys come at history from your own point of view, and that is the purpose of the class. The purpose of the class is to make you decide what you actually believe in, try to present all sides, and then you get to decide. At least that's my hope. So, yeah, I think you're right. He is biased here. But the purpose of the book is not to read it as, you know, this is absolute fact and this is the way that it happened, but it's rather to read it kind of with some skepticism. That,
Because even though he is biased and he helps, like, we can come out with the views that we've already learned, like, our views and what we've already learned, so.
Maybe that's what the underlying theme of this is, how books have always taught us in their way, and we take away from that what we do. Maybe by telling us this, we can take away different aspects of it, and you can make your own. It gives you the good and the bad, so you can make your own personal sense.
Yeah.
Personal sense. we've always been taught more bias towards the United States. If you teach us less bias towards the United States, then we can make our point.
If you take a little bit of.
Yeah.
About what you think.
Instead of just being told.
Yeah, the ponder.
I've been thinking about it. Mine is, I think the Vietnam War was a war against the spread of communism. But, I don't know, not necessarily for the good of the people in those countries. It was more of a war against the spread of communism to our country's ability to benefit and its resource large. And I think this paragraph here is evidence of that. It says that, we got a letter from the communist leader of Vietnam that said 2 million Vietnamese died of starvation during the winter of 1944 and 1945 because of the starvation caused by the French. And they requested humanitarian aid, and Truman never replied to that. We were financing 80% of the French and their war against Vietnam.
Isn't that kind of an argument that he makes in the chapter? That it was more for resources than it was for anything else?
Oh, yeah. We care less about the people, but it was hindering our way of living, so that's why we thought we could be the mediators, the good guys in it, and try to stop it.
So how many of you think that's true? Why don't you show of hands, that it was about,
By ourselves instead of.
well, about resources, more than it was even about communism, about containing communism.
Oh.
So those of you that don't think it is, why not? Haley, you didn't have your hand raised, what do you think?
Well, I don't know. I mean, honestly, if I was saying that, Austin's trying to kind of contradict me in the way possible. But
Oh, the truth.
we were kind of discussing this on the way to school because we didn't like to discuss this all the time. And,
not a bad
you think
thing
you
to
do,
do.
but, well, I guess this is kind of what Austin said in a way, so I mean, he's kind of like backing up on it. But they say that they went over there for the protection of their goods and their supplies. But while they're protecting the goods and their supplies, they also don't want communism to intrude or invade into the U.S. Because then, as we were saying, that if you were to introduce a communist rule into a place with a massive amount of poor people, and they had a communist leader at the time who was trying to run for power, they would most likely vote for the communist person because the communist person believes in all the same things, and everybody works for the same thing, with all the same price, and they work for the same goal. And so obviously poor people would rather work at a higher level or the same level as the rich people. So communism into the U.S. would probably be a bad thing, and it would probably either bring down the government in a way, but I don't know if it would rise it up or not. But it's for the protection of our own selves and our goods in a way. So the good for the country and the economy. You know, he's probably contradicting, so what's your opinion here?
He's speechless, he doesn't know what to do.
Anyway, I think, back at the congressman there or not, who was it Patton or was it like Parker or something? I think it was Parker, there in the Korean War, he said while they were there, they should have just kept going north and invaded China. Because to stop communism. I think it all stems from that.
Well, Pat would have definitely.
Patton definitely is one choice. But, I think, in that respect, and Parker on that perspective, very right. So we did come back, we did keep fighting. And, I think the communist way that they made it like everybody in the post-World War II era that who wasn't communist, whoever it was.
You can't say it was solely one thing, though. I think it was for
multiple.
For communism and.
Well, the idea of containment is that you contain communism. You know, the idea of containment was our policy on communism for 4 decades in the United States. And containment is we have to contain communism. It's like a tree. Either it's growing or it's dying. So either communism is spreading and it's growing, or it's dying. Okay? And here's, you know, and as I will outline for you, here are our policies to keep it from spreading. Okay? So I guess my question is, do you think it's in the back of our mind, is that what we're doing in Vietnam? Is we're, you know, the domino theory. Once one goes, the whole thing's gonna go. Is that in the back of our mind with Vietnam? If the whole thing goes communist, it's just a matter of time before Asia and Europe becomes communist.
Yeah, I think to some aspect, they told the American public that they're going in to Vietnam to stop the spread of communism, but while they were there, also tried to ensure their resources and make sure that they were still, we were getting benefited from it also. But I think they did both things. But they also thought if our allies started going communist, then we're screwed because we will have no allies because we obviously are not going to. And if something happens, well, we would be on. So I think it was both aspects instead of just one.
Do you think that that's the reason why Johnson wanted to go to war?
Nobody knows. You could do one thing and tell the public another
No,
thing.
that's
what I'm saying. I don't.
get that.
That's what I'm saying. I don't
Your
know.
own battle of conscience.
Right. I think Johnson just wanted support any way he could, so that's why he made up.
Once I got out there,
Yeah.
I didn't have
The government can keep secrets like that, but once his secret was exposed, you don't know.
I think that they were very good whenever American public.
Right, because nobody wanted the Vietnam War. They were all about peace and protest. If they could tell the people that they harmed us first, it would justify their actions over there, and people would get,
Well,
they would get support from the people.
And as you know, one of the things we talk about in here is that in order to win a war, one of the crucial things that you have to have is the American people that are behind you.
And they didn't have
And this
that.
is an example of a war that we fought that, you know, there were a lot of American people that were not behind the war. Do you want to say something? Next question.
I have a question. Okay, so everyone's talking about communism. What's wrong with communism? Why is it so wrong?
That's an interesting question.
Other than it changing our very far away from it. Like what's wrong with communism? Not what we do from
I think it's the communist, it's the communist leaders who have bad intentions that make communism in general so
So
bad.
you don't believe communism is a bad thing?
I don't know how to
I don't
really
think you
put it.
grow in communism.
What's
I
that?
don't think you can grow as a
No.
country in communism.
No, especially when you have someone in control who's pushing communistic views. They're obviously self-centered about themselves, putting their country in control of every aspect of life, so they can ensure their own spot. The whole issue there, and they're usually like in past have always had bad intentions. So that's why we see communism as a bad thing. It's just total control. It's just government has total control.
Well, government
total say.
takes over all private
Pretty much total.
industry, businesses, land.
So they're trying to create.
It's basically the opposite. It's basically the opposite of what we have here. So why is communism such a dirty word? Well, because it's the opposite of capitalism, right? It's the opposite of what we do here. That's why it's such a dirty word, right? So is there anybody that would say that would say that communism is a good thing, and she would advocate for it.
I think it's a great idea on paper. It's like,
It's just hard to pursue the actual,
it's hard
once you
to
put it on the
get
ground.
going.
Yeah.
Whenever they first revolution and the whole idea of communism after World War I was great for the people. Everything got up, everything was bolted, and then we're at World War II. The communist Russia there, people were rich. They were rich, but they couldn't buy food. Stuff like that.
Well, like you were saying earlier, poor people, they love communism because they can rise up to the standards of the rich people or whatever, because everyone's the same. But once you reach that aspect, there's no growing. You can't, I mean, I think one of the thrills of that would be working your way up, getting somewhere, but when everyone is of equal latitudes, I guess, so to say, there's no, like, there's no growth whatsoever, because, like you said, rich people can buy food. When everyone's at the same pace and everyone's buying the same goods, you'll run out.
Isn't that kind of like from an individual standpoint, and that's what we thrive on, is growth?
Yeah.
Right, we always are constantly wanting to get better and
It's a big
pushing for
competition. It's
the
not-
competition.
That's not the American idea. Because during the Industrial Revolution, people pushed to make themselves self-sufficient. They believed that they could come from the bottom and be one of the wealthy. And that's what America did put its determined on. And if everyone's given the same opportunity, whether you work all your life or you grow, then losing. Like, that's not fair for what they believe. They believe that they work for all this, so they shouldn't have it taken away from them or have their rights demoted to the point of why they're equal to someone that hasn't done what they have.
Just think about how boring our world would be if everything was communistic, that there would be no people or organizations that would thrive in any way, as you wouldn't see them as a higher sort of thing, like I don't say we worship things like on TV, but there would be no entertainment if there wasn't any differences among people whatsoever. If everyone's the same, there's no.
Really, when it's like developed as much as the world, that they feel like certain.
Well, I mean, right, I mean, you guys play, most of you play sports in here, or some kind of extracurricular, don't you? Isn't that, in some ways, that's part of who you are.
That's what we do.
Don't you think? That's part of who you, and you never lose that ability to compete against someone. You know, it doesn't matter what you do after this, you'll always, in some ways, be competing against.
We're always looking for competition. I don't know, sometimes, like in track, especially, like if you find out that people you're running against run like way slower times than you, it's not as fun anymore.
Yeah, you wanna go against the best. To beat the best, you gotta, to be the best, you gotta beat the best. That's the thing. And so, it's intrinsically, when I think of communism, I just think of it as the opposite of what we do and who we are.
Well, I can maybe go through Red English, like dystopian novels, they're all shadowing, or they're all portraying communist views, basically. Like, people just similarly wearing the same thing, doing the same job, it's all, symbolizing communism, basically. Like, and how it could be if we went to communism, it would not be fun, and it would be no worth living.
Bill, what do you think?
They made good points, you can't really do, once you hit the peak, I think there's nothing else. I think America wants to go away from the communist, wants to avoid communism as much as possible, because what he said, it would affect us as our allies, and which is in communism. I think we went to,
And our ability to do what?
trade-wise.
Okay, so
Yeah, I think
we talked a lot about
people say,
that.
oh, we went in there for resources, and other people say, oh, we went in there for communism. Well, it goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
If your country's go communistic and we are democratic capitalism, they're not gonna favor us. I mean, they go hand in hand.
I feel in order to stop communism, well, we're trying to save our own stuff, basically, so we're trying to make sure we kept all our resources.
Well, that's what the voice is about.
Yeah.
Maybe,
That's why we came here.
we could probably
Looking
share
for
that
more
with
opportunity.
other people from out there going to, that's how our country works.
Alright, let's try to get one more question in at least.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
Another good example was the internment camp. Well, most people kind of figured it was wrong, but it was in order to save our country. Like, we didn't know who was leading the organization.
So it gets back to what we were talking about before, that fear. Okay, one more.
Do you think dropping poison spray to destroy trees to make military zones and mining zones was truly justifiable by the U.S. at the time in Vietnam?
They didn't know the after, they didn't know the after effects.
I mean, I think it'd be similar to the atomic bomb. And it's more of to the military strategy. I mean, the atomic bomb seemed like a good
When
idea.
Agent Orange was created, it wasn't around long enough to know, oh, 10 years down the road.
Well, and I think that's kind of the difference, so, isn't it, that
It was,
we didn't really know, with the atomic bomb, we knew, I don't think that we knew how devastating it was
We know
gonna
that it was
be,
gonna
but we knew that it was gonna kill innocent lives.
Oh, that's true. Did you know it was still gonna?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
I think to an extent they knew what it would do, but I don't think they knew that down the road it did as much damage as it did. It's kinda like the bomb. They didn't realize they were gonna kill more people down the road, and at the time down the road, they didn't wanna kill more people. But at the time they did. They didn't want to, but they had to.
we
And
say
in a
that,
way,
we say that, but do we really know if they
No,
we
knew
don't.
the after
That's the
effects?
truth.
Maybe they wanted, maybe they wanted Agent Orange to
Hey,
slowly kill
This is why you
people.
asked for our opinion.
that's true.
So I'm saying, it's
Yeah.
Speaking
people
of,
say, oh, we didn't know that it was, that the atomic bomb was going to spread radiation, spread radiation 20 years down the line, but who's to say that the leaders didn't know that, or wanted that?
speaking of atomic bomb, this was a question, and I may have posed this to you before, but, you know, we talked about it in its context. What kind of impact would you say that in Harry Truman's decision-making and our military decision-making, that they said, well, you know, we could save 500,000 American lives if we don't invade mainland Japan, but we could also send the Russians a message. Do you think that entered their minds?
For sure.
That
I
there was
think
a message
both of
that
those
was being
factors
sent?
played a role.
I think
Yeah.
if they wanted to leave an impact on them.
We didn't drop the bomb, the bomb was been dropped. And we wanted to be,
We wanted to be the first people to develop it,
Yeah.
and drop it.
I think it was to prove a point, and I also think it was kind of like payback.
So when we talk about the Cold War,
It was payback, but they wanted to make it see.
when we talk about the Cold War, you know, we're talking, it's the Cold, there's a reason why it's the Cold War, right? Because war didn't break out. Do you think that it's, both sides were very hesitant because they saw what happened in Japan, that message was received by both the Soviet Union and the United States that, you know, listen, if we engage in this type of,
I think it was out of fear that whoever did do the first nuclear attack, that who's to say the next attack on you wouldn't be retaliatory. You didn't know. At the time, there was talk about, oh, nuclear weapons are being built. Nobody wanted to fire their guns first because the one that got struck back might be.
Can I make what seems to be a really bad comparison here? So, look at the Pacquiao
it's a good
Mayweather
premise,
fight.
yeah.
Look at the Pacquiao Mayweather fight. It took 6 years for that thing to happen. How long has it taken? The Soviet Union had problems with us for how long? I just think it's two big games talking right now. I don't think either one of us really wants to go to war, but we're still.
Well,
trying to
there's
get
no
in.
doubt about that, neither
We
one of
just
them
want one
wants to go
side to give in. They just wanna be like, no, we don't wanna
It's
fight.
That's my comparison there, because that's the same thing happened with Fatty, that we let his back out fight. I mean, I just think we're both just trying to like trigger one another.
That was also to create a lot of.
Fear the unknown.
But unlike, one of those fights, nobody wins in the comic.
Literally.
I said it was a
Literally, no one wins in a
That's
combat.
the only comparison I can make.
The outcome.
Literally, no one wins in a Star Wars. Okay, well, since we're about ready to be done here, we'll pick this up next time. I will take your, questions for chapter 18 if you want to move your desk back.